Hope you're having a great week. We'll just jump right into it. So everything that you sent looks fantastic. You've made such good progress on everything this week. Very nice job. Next week when I see you, we're gonna do something a little bit different than we normally do for how our lesson goes. So we're gonna do what I call observed practice, which means that when you come, we'll check your new note speller page that I'm gonna give you today, like we would usually do. But then for about 15 or 20 minutes, you're gonna pretend like I'm not actually here. So I'll still be sitting by you, but I'll back off a little bit. But you're gonna pretend like I'm not there and you're just at home practicing like you normally would. So this way I can kind of see a little bit how your normal practice would go. And if there's anything I can say to give you ideas or tips or help you out, make your practice a little bit easier or smoother in the long run, or if there's anything I just want to remind you of after seeing what you would normally do for your practice, then we can go over it at the end of the lesson, and then we'll, you'll get your normal guided lesson plans for over the break, so we won't need to talk about anything for ideas for what you'll work on, because you'll be getting the lesson plans for week to week after I see you next week. So that's pretty much how our lesson will go next time. You don't have to plan anything special. You don't have to do anything different or be concerned about it at all. I just like to give everybody the heads up, so that way you don't come in next week and I tell you that's what we're doing and you're going, what? What do you mean? What is that? So now you know that's what we'll plan on for next time. Again, it'll only be about 15 or 20 minutes of your lesson, but it'll just give me a chance to see how your practice goes, okay? All right, so let's get in to our stuff here. We'll go over the note speller page first. Now with this one, I got the picture, which I left in another part of the house, but that's fine. So this one, when I checked it, it actually was perfect. The only thing that was a little bit funky was letter D on number 1. So on letter D, we got our notes named correctly, but we might have gotten a little distracted when we were drawing in the harmonic interval. We did 2 of the same note instead of the E and the C stacked on top of each other in a harmonic third. So that was the only one I wanted to take a look at. Everything else you did beautifully. Looks like we are in good shape for our melodic and harmonic seconds and thirds. So what we'll do for next week is page 14. So on page 14, we're taking a look at what we call our landmark C's. And C's are kind of helpful to us when we're reading, because if we can remember where our C's are on the staff, it can help us find other notes more easily. So what they're showing you at the top of the page, is first we have what they're calling bass C. And that's just our C that shows up on the bass clef staff, right? We call that the all-cows eat grass C, or just C on bass clef. Okay, the next one is middle C, and both of these are actually middle C here, right? But this shows us middle C in bass clef, and then this shows us middle C in treble clef. Same note, just 2 different ways to write it on the staff. But again, if we can remember where middle C is, it helps us figure out our positioning for finding other notes. And then over here on the far right, we have what they call treble C, or C that shows up on the treble clef staff in the space. That would be if we're using face to find the C, F-A-C, it's that one. So all of these are notes that, of course, we are already very familiar with, but they're just pointing them out to us at the top here because, again, if we're really, really comfy with finding our C's and locating them quickly, it can help us find our other notes more easily too. So for number 1, all you're doing is circling the C's. You're gonna leave all the other notes that they show you alone. Only we are interested in the C's. So you'll circle all the C's there for treble and bass clef. Then on number 2, you're going to connect the landmark C's that they show you on the staff on the left side with, they've got vitamins with the names on them on the right side. So you'll just connect the right landmark note to the correct name based on how they explained it at the top of the page, okay? Should be pretty straightforward there, but if you have any questions, we will go over that together when I see you next week. All right, on we go. So let's look at Sunflower Boogie first. So this one was excellent. You did such a better job on your tempo, and you got it so fast. Even the slower sections, you really increased your speed this week. So it's all pretty much the same speed. It's so much better than last week. You did a great job. So we'll actually move on from this in our lesson time. If you want to go ahead and add that to your review list this week, we'll make it a new review piece option. But you did fantastic there. So then Little Gray Owl, same book, different song. Take a look there. So we've been working on this first line here, and we were practicing first line, both hands, but then also doing a little extra practice for right hand on the rhythm. And the right hand rhythm, I think, is still, we're almost there, but we're still wanting to hear more of a difference between our quarter notes and our eighth notes. Putting hands together, you did a much better job. It looks like that's making a lot more sense for where your hands are gonna go and how they work together to play through that line, both hands at the same time. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna play that right hand part for you so that way you have something you can go back and listen to this week, and you can kind of hear how the rhythm is supposed to sound so that we can just get a little bit more familiar with the rhythm that we want to be hearing. Because again, we just want to hear a difference between those quarters and those eighth notes, right? So I will start, let's see, I'm going to do about 1, 2, 3, here we go. A little bit on the slow side compared to what you're able to do on your own. Again, we want to really slow down those quarter notes so that way they sound different from the eighth notes. You can do the whole thing faster, but the important part is that we hear a difference between how those note values sound. So if you want, you could play it a little faster, which would go more like this. We still hear the difference between the eighths and the quarters, but it goes a little bit faster. That's probably going to feel more comfortable overall and more where we want our final tempo to be. But again, if you need to start it slower, that's perfectly fine. That might even be a better place to start overall, just to make sure that everything makes sense and locks in where you want it. And then we will continue to work on that hands together. I would actually suggest working just on the right hand for the next couple of days. So maybe over the weekend, maybe a little bit on Monday, whatever practice you're able to do, just focus on the right hand so that way you can really pay attention for that rhythm. And then after that, from maybe Tuesday to Friday, when I see you again next week, you can put your hands back together so that you can get used to practicing it together again. We really want to make sure that rhythm shows up this week. The other thing I want you to do is to start taking a look at the second line. So here, if you notice, it starts pretty familiar, nothing too crazy there. We get to measure 7, which is here, and we get this kind of interesting V shape going on. Okay, so what this means is that we're actually going to be combining the melody between both your hands. So we start the melody in the right hand, and then the left hand takes over part of the melody, and then it goes back to right hand. So you don't really have to do anything different here. It's just showing us that the melody is crossing from treble clef down to bass clef, right hand down to left, and back again, okay? So I want you to start that hands alone, although you really won't need to do it hands alone for very long. You'll pick that up pretty quick as you're working on it. So when I see you next week, our goal is to be able to do both lines hands together and to really have that right hand rhythm feeling a little bit smoother from where we have it right now, okay? All right, moving right along. Let's see. Morning Prelude, we'll go over that one next. So this one, I can't read my writing, it's too small. Let's see. Okay, let me open up here. Come on. We're almost done with this book too, huh? Okay, so this one you did fantastic. You really just did a great job with it. And we've got the repeat moving up, both hands higher. Your counting is really good. That second line, I think we're still securing some of those notes there, but it's coming along very nicely. I think by next week that'll be feeling a little bit more confident as well. Looks great. So what we're gonna do for this week is we are gonna add the pedal. If you notice, they show you with that underneath bracket shape, right, where the pedal goes down a little bit, and then we hold, straight line, and then the pedal goes up a little bit to show that we lift the pedal at the end. So you're basically going to pedal each line, and then at the start of a new line, you will start the pedal again. The exception is the last line, because if we look at the last line, we have a break in the pedal right here, right? We're actually gonna lift the pedal after 2 measures, and then we're gonna do a clean pedal from here to the end. That's gonna be very important. You'll notice if you hold the pedal all the way through the last line, doesn't sound quite as nice. We want that break in the pedal in the middle of that last line. So we'll add the pedal, we'll start getting used to that. It's gonna change the sound and make it even prettier. I think you'll really like it. And then the other thing I want to remind you about is to make sure when you start, where you're sitting on the bench is comfortable so that you can play 1 octave where you normally would, and that you could also play 1 octave higher without having to scoot over on the bench, okay? So that's your challenge for this week, is to make sure you're sitting in a place where you can move from 1 octave to the next with your arms, but not your tush, all right? All right, this one looks great. So that takes us to our composition. I'm not gonna give you any new technique today. We're actually gonna wait until the break to go over some new technique from week to week. And then when you come back after the break, we're gonna start introducing some different technique, because by now you're probably getting a little tired of pentascales and tri-hats. So what we'll do is we'll kind of tackle that over the summer. But for now, that just means we have our composition. So I really like what you came up with. It's very mysterious sounding. I wonder if Little Gray Owl was inspiring for the sound palette of this piece. But we did a great job with using the broken intervals for the left hand. I know we had talked about blocked, but I like how you broke it up. It gave it kind of a nice effect. So we've got a nice change in the octaves for the right hand. It's interesting because we don't really have a very clear melody, but I really like the effect of how you put your hands together. So it's almost a little bit more like something you would maybe hear in the background, not something that has a melody that kind of gets stuck in your head, but I really like how it came together. So what I was thinking we would do this week is, sorry, can't read my writing again. You'd think I would have that down by now. Okay. Oh, I had a suggestion. Okay. So when you get to the part in your left hand where you start going from fifths to fourths and thirds and seconds, where you start building down into the tighter knit intervals, I wonder what happens if you actually take off the pedal there. It might clean up the sound a little bit, especially since where left hand is sitting kind of low in the keys. I think you might like that effect. So if you don't, that's fine. I do want you to try it out this week and see which way you like it better. It might sound a little bit cleaner that way, but if you prefer it with the pedal after you try it without, that's fine too. I just want you to give it a try, decide which one you like better there. And then I wrote something else. I just have to decipher it. Oh, yes, okay. Sorry, I don't know what I was doing when I was writing these notes. All right, so then the other thing I wanted you to do for this week before we kind of leave this alone, because I don't know that this composition needs to be much longer. I like that it's a little bit on the shorter side because I think it is very well balanced between the different sections. So unless you would like to, I don't think we need to really increase the length of this one. What I would like to try is experimenting with some dynamic changes this week. So we can get some different effects in, maybe have a section that feels strong and then maybe a section that feels softer, or even have more of a decrescendo, right? For example, at the end when your right hand is moving up through the octaves, that would be a natural place for each time your right hand moves up, it gets a little softer if we have more of a decrescendo section there. So that could maybe be something to try out, or just trying out different dynamics in different spots and seeing what you like. But let's intentionally put in some contrast this week. We'll have some dynamic changes, and then I think we should probably be pretty good to go, unless there's anything else you'd like to do with it when I see you next time. So I think that is everything. The only other thing is to continue to include reviewing an old piece at the end of your practice each day that you do that. Remember, next time we'll do observed practice for 15-20 minutes of your lesson, but you don't have to prep anything separate. It'll just be whatever you would normally practice and how you would work on it all at home. And I think that's everything. So have a great weekend, a great week, and I will see you next Friday.